we're getting closer and closer to Fury versus Usyk, and yes, you can say, gee, once bitten, twice shy. No, I think we're going to get this fight. I think it will happen come May the 18th. I really do. And I look at this fight, and it's not a prediction video. It's not necessarily a breakdown, but it's certain worries I have for Tyson Fury. Specifically one big major worry, which is, of course, the cut that he sustained in sparring, which ultimately pushed his fight back from February now to May. Apparently that was the same eye where the cut against Otto Wallin was. Now, if you watch my videos, if you watch my channel any great length of time, I've always said when I talk about Tyson Fury, in any fight he's really been in, that there's always a worry, or a worry I always have, is that cut reopening. And I'm not talking about necessarily that, well, I suppose you can add the sparring cut to it now, but the cut he sustained against Otto Wallin was a big cut, it was deep. Now, whenever a fighter gets cut like that, especially a big gash like that, you could make the case that for some, it never fully heals. Like, the skin is never going to be as sturdy as it was pre-cut. And an example I always give is, if you look, and I'll even try and get a picture or two on screen, if you look at Vitaly Klitschko, we know about the cut he sustained against Lennox. It was more than one cut, it was multiple cuts. Even in his mouth, he was bleeding. His eye was mashed up against Lennox Lewis, and people argued that stoppage was controversial, which is complete BS. I mean, if ever there was a stoppage that had no controversy to it, it was that stoppage. I mean, George Foreman was very animated that it wasn't stopped earlier, and some really couldn't argue with that. It was a horrendous cut, horrendous gash. Now, that happened in 2003. I think it was June 2003, thereabouts, when Lewis fought Klitschko. Now, you fast forward to, I think it was either 2009 or 2010, it was one or the other. Klitschko at the time was WBC champion. He had won that title, never got the Lennox Lewis rematch, had won the title, had spent time out of the ring. I believe it was a knee injury, came back in 2008, and again was able to pick that title up, get a crack at the immediate. I think it was St. Peter he fought for the title. And the heavyweight division at the time was just not particularly good. This is an understatement. It was terrible. So he was in there with guys who him and his brother Vladimir were significantly better than, and a lot of them were out of shape, a lot of them were short. There was a variety of things. He went in there with Kevin Johnson. Now, Kevin Johnson today, we look upon him as a journeyman, and he pretty much is. He's got a lot of losses. He is one of those guys where more often than not, he goes the distance. He's taken the likes of Dubois the distance. He's been stopped by Anthony Joshua. He's fought Andy Ruiz, to name a few. And when Tyson Fury fought him, that was a much better Kevin Johnson. So I always look at that win and I always say that was actually a very good performance by Tyson Fury, because he was fighting the Kevin Johnson who still had something to him at the time, unlike the Kevin Johnson we see nowadays, where if you beat him, you're just like, all right, well, you're supposed to, When he fought Klitschko, he was able to... Klitschko won that fight clearly. I think it went the distance. He was one of very few to go the distance with Vitaly Klitschko. Chisora went the distance. There's very few do. And ultimately, it was a Vitaly Klitschko win. It was a fairly conclusive win. But jabs that Kevin Johnson was able to get over some of Klitschko's shots and have success with his jab in that fight. Now, Klitschko was never in any danger or anything like that, but the jabs did land on the eye. The eye that years prior was cut very badly by Lennox Lewis and required God knows how many stitches and all that. You look at his face after it, the eye is still looking in a bad shape. And bear in mind, that's years after the fact. He's taken a couple of jabs, the eye still doesn't look amazing. Now, of course, Vitaly Klitschko, I will attest, that was a worse cut than what Tyson Fury received. It was much worse. But the fact of the matter is, if the cut is still opening now, almost 5 years later, and given the fact that the cut, if it happened in February, you're talking middle, it was about the middle of, sorry, it was the start of February. So March, April, May, so 3 months roughly. I don't know if that's enough time for that scar tissue to even remotely heal, because the scar tissue was always going to be there. And if it's opening up in sparring, if Oleksandr Usyk targets that, how soon in the fight could that open? And if it does open for Tyson Fury, there's two things you need to worry about. Well, the main thing you need to worry about is that will the referee stop it if it's caused by a punch? Because if it opens and it gets bad and progressively worse, you may force a referee. Now, there have been occasions in fights where a referee, for whatever reason, maybe they fear repercussions from the corner or the sanctioning body or whoever, they've let fights go on where one fighter has been, they just shouldn't, they've had an injury and they shouldn't be fighting. Dennis Lebedev, Guillermo Jones is a good example. The referee for that fight was a man by the name of Stanley Christodoulou. If you've ever seen Lebedev, he literally looked like the Elephant Man in there. He shouldn't. That's the worst swelling I've ever seen. There's no way he should have been allowed to continue as long as he did. I think it happened in round 5 or 6, and the fight ended in round 11, where Christodoulou, you could see it. He gave Lebedev a fast count because he knew, I need to stop this fight. This guy can't carry on, and he gave Lebedev a really fast count because Lebedev was legit down, but it was like that was such a bad swelling. And he would not stop the fight, nor would the corner stop it. He had to kind of almost... I'm sure he was obviously afraid to probably stop it rather than let the corner do it. So when the chance came, he was like, 1, 2, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, 10. You will see that, where a referee won't stop it, a corner won't pull the guy out, because they obviously... And Lebedev was ahead in that fight, which was an eyebrow raiser, because that was a clear Guillermo Jones fight. He was winning the fight. That's a good example. Another worry you would have is that if the cut does open and the referee doesn't stop it, it could potentially impair Tyson Fury's vision if the blood starts to flow down into the eyes. Now, it could be lucky and it could flow down the cheek. You could be okay, but if it does start flowing down the eyes, if you're in there against Oleksandr Usyk, who's very accurate, he's hard enough to read at the best of times when you've got 2 working eyes and everything is cleared. He's hard enough to read at the best time because the movement is so good. The timing is so good, everything, the angles he gives you, the footwork. You have a cut that's open and it's running down into your eye, you're going to have problems against Oleksandr Usyk. I wonder how big an issue or how much of this is on the mind of Tyson Fury or Team Tyson Fury. Maybe it's not at all. But surely if you're Oleksandr Usyk and you come into this fight knowing that, okay, this fight has been pushed back once already because Tyson Fury had a cut, well, that's a clear weakness. That's a clear target that I can focus on. And he'd be right to focus on it. Was it Gary Mason that Lennox Lewis knew had a detached retina and he focused specifically just to target that? I think it was a detached retina. It was an eye injury, definitely. Boxing is brute. You know, any weakness, your opponent is going to just zone in on that and be like, I've got you. You don't want to hyper focus on it, but you do want to know, you're going to know it's there. So you're going to target it. Surely if that's the case, Team Fury got to be worrying. If that is the case, because Oleksandr Usyk, again, he's very accurate. You only have to look at him against AJ early on. He was able to just instantly take Anthony Joshua's jab away and start landing his own left hands. Might not be as easy to do it against Fury, but if you can do it against Joshua, there's a good chance you can do it against Fury. Might not be as easy, but I'm sure he can still do it. And if he's landed big jabs, big right jabs, left hands, I wonder what might happen. And again, you're talking about roughly 3 months from having to get your eye stitched up to now. Does that mean you're going to have to hold back in sparring? You're going to have to wear even heavier head guards? Does that mean that you're kind of everyone treating with kid gloves? We don't want that cut to open again and have this fight pushed back again. I don't know. It's an interesting one. It's something that we do need to think about. I've always said it with Tyson Fury, that I do worry because that cut against Valine, the scar tissue is still going to be present. And I said it against Wilder. I think I said it against Dylan White. I might have even said it against Francis Ngannou, that if the right shot lands and it just happens to, like a knife through butter, that's going to open and then you're going to have some problems. Because with a different referee in that Otto Valine fight, God knows what might have happened. If that was in a different state, or if there was no Wilder fight potentially lined up, if it was just Tyson Fury in a comeback fight, there was no real plans moving on, there's a good chance the referee could have stopped that fight. No one would have complained if he did stop it. It was a horrible cut. So that's something we got to take into consideration for this Fury-Usyk fight. It's not the smoking gun, it's not the be-all and end-all, but it is something that we do need to talk about when we talk about Fury versus Usyk and what a problem Tyson Fury may run into. It may be that cut. It may actually limit what he's able to do, not in terms of, physical training, but in terms of, the boxing, the spar and everything. That might limit it. If you know there's a cut there and you don't want to reopen it, you're going to be wearing big, heavy head guards, or you might be just doing body spars. I doubt they're just doing body spars. I seriously doubt it, but you don't want to risk that. Let me know your thoughts in the comments section below. I hope you enjoyed the video, people. Smash the like button if you could, and subscribe, of course, as always, if you haven't already. Peace.